Great. So it is 3:54. Class, this is Professor McLean, and welcome to our Zoom session. And this particular segment, this Zoom, it's being recorded because I may ask you to watch this, in which Professor Grace Graham and myself are going to be discussing this book called Immigrant Kids. And she is going to be my guest today. This is for a course that I'm taking, which teaches us how to teach online, called, I know the last part is, okay, so it's structured remote teaching. And so that's what this particular course is. And so my participant today is going to be Professor Grace Graham, who has been teaching, she will tell us how many years she's been teaching art and photography at Montgomery College, both on this campus and the Rockville campus. And she is also teaches photography, and she's won many awards. But we're lucky that she is on the Germantown campus and will be joining us very soon in about 3 minutes. So I'll text her now and tell her that this is being recorded and that we are ready to start. We are recording now, Grace, if you are ready. So the reason we're doing this particular, I'm Professor McLean, by the way, and the reason that we are doing this book called Immigrant Kids is because the name of my course is Peace and Justice. And we stress all kinds of global issues as well as our own particular issues. And you all know right now, it is the summer of 2020, and you know that we are dealing with the COVID virus, and we are dealing with police brutality and Black Lives Matter. So there's 3 things going on, but underlying that is the issue of immigrants and what happens to them in terms of this terrible disease that is a pandemic all over the world, what happens to them in terms of police brutality, and what happens to them in terms of Black Lives Matter if you don't have white skin. So I felt that many of our students, I'll see if Grace is here yet, she is not, that many of our students do not really understand in the United States in the early 20s, well, even before that, the 30s and the 40s, of what life was like for these immigrant kids. And the reason I love this book, other than I've met Mr. Russell and he's a wonderful human being, that he's got wonderful pictures like this, in which, you know, they say a picture can, well, a photograph can tell in 1,000 words what people are thinking. How there'll be a school, well, here's a wonderful picture here. This may look familiar. And more pictures. You can tell almost every one of these. This is one of my very favorite ones, and this is by Lewis Heim, that Professor Graham will be discussing Lewis Heim, and this is called Carrying Coats to be Sewn at Home. And even the children worked then. And so this is an important part of American history that my students who are immigrants in 2020, 2019, they have no idea that this was happening in the United States. And one of the best pictures that I can show them is this picture of coming over on the boat. And they are shocked at that. The immigrants crowd the deck into New York Harbor. So this is a very important part of American history. Here's Ellis Island, which I think I just showed you. And another picture of some immigrants were turned back and had to go back. Some got lost, some sneaked away. So it's quite an interesting history of immigrants and many, well, several families living in one apartment. And this again, this photograph is not by Mr. Heim. This is a picture of the dinner table, you know, to now. In the past, we don't really eat together, but this is a Mr. Heim photograph of a family eating together. And there weren't any bathtubs, and here's a child who was taking a bath. And what my students are so surprised about is the student seems, the child is very happy, even though it's in a laundry area, because there wasn't a real bathtub. And I believe this again was a Mr. Heim picture. So, and there's children again, they were doing many times the sewing. And so we will look to see if our guest is back. Here's, you might think they're playing here, but they're not. This is the way they were living, right by the railroad tracks. It's actually, and the railroad tracks, what it says here is camping out on the fire escape. This is street kids fighting in the tenement district. And you all know that you'll be filling out paragraphs about whether you ever lived in a area where there were all different kinds of immigrants, or were they all one? I thought this picture was amazing of a schoolroom. Let me see if that's that's Mr. Reese. He's also a famous photographer. Notice there are no pencils, no paper. This is a schoolroom. And I'll read what it says. Class in New York City, the Market School, Essex Martin School. Those appear to be, unless I'm wrong, what do you think? Are they all boys? I'll give you a different picture and you see what you think. Maybe this is a place where I would have a polling. Maybe at the end I can set up a polling and have you vote. Do you or do you not think that these are all boys in this school? So where were the girls? Let's see. Here's a girls' cooking class, which we would now call home ec. I bet there weren't any boys at that time. There are now boys in our home tech. Oh, and this is for the children that had to work all day long. This is night school. Again, are they all boys? This would be the same polling question that I would ask you to do at the end. Yes or no? So Professor McLean will have to know how. I'll have to ask Professor Graham if she knows how to do the polling at the end. This is the public library, an immigrant student. It's nice they got a girl in there. And I already showed you the one at work. Now, how old do you think this girl is? Maybe I'll ask you in a poll. She's working at a factory. And how old do you think? This again is Mr. Hine that I think Professor Graham is going to be telling us about. Let me just stop to see if she has joined us yet. No, she has not. Wonder if she's having trouble getting in. Here, they're working at home. You can see that the children are working. Let me just call her one more time. Oh, there's the poll. Okay, maybe I can set up. Let me just first text her to tell her we're being recorded. Oh, she's here, class.
Hi.
Hello, Professor. This is being reported. I wanted you, first of all, if you would tell the class your name and how long you've been at Montgomery College. And I told them that I think the camera is seeing you now, which is good. So I've shown them the book and many, many pictures of Mr. Hine. So I think I'll let you tell them about Mr. Hine and maybe why you think that photography is so important and who you are and how long you've been at the college.
Okay, that's a lot. Okay, my name is Grace Graham. I teach art history and photography at Montgomery College. I've been here for this 18 years. 18 years. In the fall, we started my 19th year teaching at MC. So Lewis Hine was a photographer in the early 20th century, and he, at a time when a lot of photographers were pioneers in subject matter, things that they photographed. And he spent a lot of time photographing people working, and obviously the immigrant kids, especially children, that he saw. And some of his photographs are classic, especially in terms of leading to changes in child labor laws and the end of the exploitation of children. So that's, in a nutshell, why Lewis Hine is a very important photographer in the history of photography and the history of the country.
Professor Graham, I wonder, since that this is being recorded and we're learning how to do this, I was going to ask you 3 questions. Like, is one of them, or is there something where we can have both of our faces together on this screen?
I mean, I can see your face and my face.
I cannot. So what should I do so that, there I am. I see myself. Are you small at the top?
Not on my screen, no.
But am I small at the top?
No.
Is it half and half?
Do you have something open on your screen?
I have a full screen of you, and then my little picture is straight above you.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You don't know what that would, and I'm afraid I don't know if I should hit share screen, but you haven't done that.
You can share screen, and then the pictures will probably change.
Yeah, so I'm scared to do that, but let me just see. One participant, multiple participants can share simultaneously, but okay, when I click that, nothing happens.
So you're in Zoom, right? Yeah, you're in Zoom.
I'm in regular Zoom, not the college Zoom. How many participants can share at the same time? One can share at the same time.
Yeah, only one.
I was hoping that we could be absolutely side by side. Now there I see you on a screen, but I don't know how I would get myself there.
I don't know.
I can click share, but I don't know. Oops.
I think if you share screen, you can only share an application. So do you have, oh, now I'm at the top small. And now I see launch in.
Okay, okay, you are stop share. I'm going to put stop share. Good.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, that's good. All right, so that I don't really know how to do. Okay, the second thing I was going to practice it with you is, do you know how, I mean, you can see my filing cabinet behind me. My students tell me that I can somehow add a
background?
yeah, but I don't know if I have to be a host in order to let that happen.
No, you can do it at any time. If you take your cursor and run it over the picture of yourself.
Way up here, yes.
And you see the word mute?
Yes.
And then next to it are 3 little dots?
Yes.
You click on the 3 little dots.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, that's not where I thought it was.
Okay.
Maybe that's not it. No, it's in settings. Let me figure it out. I know I've seen it done. I haven't done it.
Okay.
But,
so while you're thinking about that, then or maybe we can address that when we're done, so I can figure out how to do that. So let's go on to my next point, which was, do you know how to do the polling? Like I showed them a picture, and this is our book. Now, see, you don't see a large picture of me, do you? I mean, can you see this book?
yeah, I see that.
Okay, is it large on your screen?
It's half of the screen, yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
see,
half, it's the same size as me.
I wish mine were half and half. I have to learn how to do that.
I
So
think you do that.
I showed them a lot of Mr. Hines' sort of pictures, and I found this one where the students were all in the classroom. It was this one.
Okay, hold it up a little bit because I can't see it. Okay.
And I said, do you think they are all male or not? And I said, I'm going to put a poll at the end of this session, and they are to vote yes or no. Okay. So but I don't know quite how to set that up. And so I can maybe, do you think that would be good to do at the end?
Hold on.
Sure.
I don't.
Because we could.
I took an advanced Zoom class, so I should know this.
I mean, I can click polling, but I don't know what's going to happen. It said add a question. Well, I'll add a question. Let me see. Well, they don't have, let's see. So I'm adding a question.
Okay, I figured out why you don't see 2 people. Okay.
All right, well, wait a minute. Now I'm ask me. Let me put ask me later. How can I get out of this thing?
I don't know.
Oh dear, I'm in something. What should I do? Join a meeting? I don't know.
Oh, you're in the wrong screen. Just.
But I don't know how to get out of it.
Well, look on your toolbar down below. You probably have 2 little Zoom screens.
I have one Zoom. I have this thing, open support chat. That is in it. What comes up is sign in again. How can I get? All I have is sign in, host a meeting, or join a meeting. I guess.
Okay, minimize that window and the Zoom window.
I don't know how to minimize it.
It's up at the corner, upper right. There's an X and a little boxes and a minus.
There's nothing. I have a white screen, and all it says is join meeting, host meeting, sign in, and above that it says request a demo, resources, and support. It has nothing. There's no little box or there's no box.
At the very, very top, it says on the left Zoom meeting, and on the far right at the very top, what does it say? You have
support.
Like an X?
Okay, wait, I just got it. Okay, now what should I look for there? Sign in Zoom?
No, just minimize it. Press the minus thing.
Good. All right, so I'm going to get out of this ask a question thing. I'm going to get out of that. Okay, so I need to know how to do the poll. Okay, now you said you know how to do share a screen?
Oh, I figured out what your problem was, yeah.
Okay.
In the upper, when you're in the Zoom thing, so what do you see now? You see...
I see my picture, and you're real small, and at the top it's minimize and X and gallery view.
Okay, so you're in, click on the gallery view.
Okay, not the 4 little marks, but the 9 marks. It looks like checkers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This thing. All right. Oh, I love it. That's fabulous. Okay, because then they can see that we're together on this. Right. This is good. This is good. Okay, so why don't, because I still have to figure out then how to do a backdrop, and I have to figure out how to do, what's the other thing? Oh yeah, the polling, how to do the polling. Okay, so so suppose your students would say to you, why should I take a photography course? And why do you think Mr. Hine is such a big deal? Why does Professor McLean, this is an English class. Yeah, it's about peace and justice, but why did, in other words, I cut out of the newspaper, which I was going to show you when you came. This is, and I thought Immigrant Kids is telling a story of what happened then. Well, this is in the Washington Post. This is what has happened at the White House in the last week. And
oh, okay, so it's photographs of all the signs. Yeah, I saw that.
All the signs, all the different
They're so
signs.
cool, yeah.
And so I thought that was really important. I don't know if the class can see it, but I thought it was real important that they would see all of this magnificent artwork, that art is important. Art and photography can tell us something about the times that people would not understand 50 years from now. So what would you say to my students if they'd say, why is she choosing a book about photography? Why is photography important? What would you tell them about that and Mr. Hine?
In terms of social justice?
Yeah, and in terms
I would say, well, first of all, let's go back to the saying that everybody's heard before, probably 1,000 times, that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And there are photographs that capture a moment, and that's what photography is. It's capturing a moment in time. But there are photographs that in the past and now and in the future will capture a moment of time where a serious injustice cannot be overlooked. A perfect case in point, Sally, which I know you remember.
Professor McLean.
Oh, sorry.
It's from
Professor
my class.
Excuse me, Professor McLean. I am certain you remember the photograph taken by John Philo, although you might not know his name was John Philo. But the photograph taken by John Philo, actually, let me just see if I can find it. I will show it to you, and you'll have to make me a co-host. But let me.
Okay, that could be interesting. How to make.
Let me find. I know I have it. I just have to find where I have it.
I think I have you as a participant. I wanted to put you as a moderator, which would have let you.
Well, if you click on participants, you can. There should be a button to the right that will allow you to make me a co-host.
All right, I see. Okay, participants. Just the two of us, S, M, and GG. Somehow, manage participants.
Yeah, click on that. And then it should come up.
It won't let me do anything. Nothing happens.
Okay.
It just says two. I think I have to originally do that. So it might be, and you can hardly turn your microphone there to see it. But the whole purpose of this class is to show that all of our disciplines need to work together. We need to work with science. Science needs to work with history. And Professor Graham is a good friend of mine. And I thought, we're discussing the value of photography. And hello, she teaches photography. This was a win-win. Professor?
Let me see if I can share my screen. No, you have to enable me. And it should be, you click on participants and bring up your participant screen.
All right, now I can, okay, now let me bring up my screen. All right, I see my screen.
Under participants.
Yeah, and I see your name.
And if you go to me, I think you can make me a co-host.
It says more, maybe I can, more. Yeah, make you a co-host.
Yeah.
All right. You want to make her a co-host? Yes. Okay. I think you are. Yes, you are.
Let me see if I can share my screen.
Class, I have to tell you right away, if you ever want to take a course from Professor Graham. I've learned more from her than from anybody in IT in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you. This photograph, Professor McLean, do you recall this?
Absolutely. Yep.
Does it still, when you take a look at it, make your heart sort of stop for a second? Do you have an intake of breath at the horror of what is represented in that photograph?
Yes.
Of which we had just had last month, about 6 weeks ago, the 50-year anniversary.
Of Kent State. If I'm not mistaken, class, if any of you know Professor Joe Thompson, he went to Kent State. I think he was there at that time, but I'm not positive. But I think he was.
So it's kind of relevant, I guess, maybe a little bit to the days that we're in right now, in that we are in the, I've lost track, the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th day of protests around the country. And what was happening in this time in 1970 were, and had been happening for years before that, on college campuses, were students protesting the draft to be sent to Vietnam. Because in those days, it wasn't a volunteer army, it was drafted. And once you turned 18, if you were male, you were subject to being drafted and sent to Vietnam, to drafted for the army. And for a while, that you could get what was called a deferment, meaning you could avoid going to Vietnam as long as you were a full-time college student. But then that went away. So so there have been these protests for years and years and years against this war in Vietnam, and against the draft, and against the idea that people could be drafted when they were 18, but they couldn't vote. In those days, you couldn't vote until you were 21. So this is all this type of protest. It went on for years and years and years. And there was also a considerable generation gap between the like my generation and my parents' generation, who had fought in World War II. And there was just a lot of sort of tension between the two. So what happens in 1968, Richard Nixon is elected president, and he is in part elected with the promise of getting out of this war in Vietnam. And then in December of 1969, he's inaugurated in 1969 in January. In December, he, instead of by this time he has not taken any steps to get out of Vietnam, and then what he does is he invades Cambodia and Laos, and the next thing you know, the war is just escalated. It's gotten worse, and more people are needed to be drafted and so forth for the army to fight in Vietnam. And so
you're going to explain then who's doing what in this picture, right?
I'm good to that.
Yep.
So this is in by the springtime, it's clear that he's not, the war is not shrinking, it's growing, and the protests grow and grow and grow, and they start to get I wouldn't say super violent, but some of the students would throw bottles and rocks at the police, and so it got kind of out of hand. So the weekend before, this was on a Monday, the weekend before, there had been quite a protest, and I think it got a little bit out of hand. So the governor of Ohio called in the National Guard. And so on this Monday, there had been scheduled a protest at noon. Well, there wasn't supposed to be one, but it was supposed to be canceled because that was the governor said. But there's one anyway. And it so happened that John Philo, the photographer here, he was a student at Kent State, and he worked in the photography lab. He was a photography student, and he was so he was basically running the lab, the dark room. So he was in the dark while people were gathering. But he had gone to lunch and happened to take his camera and about 7 rolls of film. And while he's walking across the campus, students are protesting and yelling, and they have signs and all that sort of stuff, and people start throwing cans or rocks or something at the National Guard, and the National Guard start marching towards the students in a line, much like the lines that we've seen in the protests the last couple of weeks. And then the next thing you know, the National Guard shoots live ammunition into the students, and 4 students died, and I think 8 or 9 more were injured from that incident. And John Philo, being a photographer, happened to get he took lots and lots of pictures. But this picture, it became sort of just kind of like the icon of the whole situation. He took his pictures, he sent them on the off to the Associated Press wire, and it got picked up. The New York Times published this picture to publish on the cover of the New York Times, and it shows this young girl who is just reacting in horror to the death of her friend, and people have stopped and are staring and looking. And that photograph sort of summed it up. And the reason why this particular photograph is so important, he did win the Pulitzer Prize for this.
And he was a student.
He was a student, yeah. And then he went on for like a 30-year career with ABC News as a photojournalist. He just retired a few years ago. But he, what he's captured, the horror of it, with the whole idea of the National Guard shooting live ammunition at the students was a step too far, even for my parents' generation, who thought that the kids were being a little, they were young whippersnappers, as they would have called us, not appreciating the value of what, whatever. There was a big difference, but it was too much when you go shooting at college students. And it became, this incident at Kent State became a pivotal point in that war. And so not long after that, within the next year, the voting age was finally changed to 18 from 21. So that, at least that could happen. And
is that the draft then disappeared?
What?
The draft then disappeared.
The draft, first it went to a lottery for not in 71, I think in 72. It went to a lottery, and then by 73 we were out.
You're out.
And then 74.
Then do you know when the 18-year-olds, do you remember when they were allowed to vote then? Was it in 71 or 72?
I think it was in 72.
Okay.
But I did not vote.
Okay, I think I'll ask that as a challenge to the students. If any of them can email me, the first person that emails me will have a little prize. And the question is, when were 18-year-olds allowed to vote? Give me the year.
Okay. The year that the law passed.
And the year that the law passed, and the year that, 2 dates. So that, the year that students were allowed to vote. What were the 2 points now? There were 2 dates.
When did the law pass, and what was the first presidential election?
Yeah, the first presidential election. Okay.
Yeah, which would have been the first election.
Okay.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this photograph that I find today is a couple of things, and I'll tell you a little story about it. I show this this is from one of my lectures in my photography class. We talk about photojournalism, and sometimes I have these people who are, retired from the Lifelong Institute take my class. So one year we were talking about photojournalism. I throw this image on the screen, and so they were both older, a little older than me, and one of them was at Kent State when this happened, and the other one, and she said, as soon as I showed it, she said that picture ended the Vietnam War, and I was like, that's a little bit far-fetched. But anyway, then they got into it because he was like on the side of the National Guard, and she was on the side of the students, and they start yelling at in my classroom. Yelling at each other back and forth because they were just, she was really opinionated anyway. But anyway, so they were just going back and forth. And finally I said, and that is the power of a photograph, that, nearly 50 years later, 2 people can see the same photograph and just go after each other.
That is a wonderful story. And thank you for sharing that. And Professor Graham, what they said in this course that we're taking in how to interest students is to tell a story. And you
I tell lots of
just
stories.
told a story.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Well, it's almost 30 minutes, so I think that I should probably wind up this, because the instructions also said students will be leaving their computers after 30 minutes. But I wondered if there's anything else that you wanted to add.
Well, I can add one more thing about this photograph.
Okay.
And that is that a few years ago, we put it, my students did a project of on Pulitzer Prize images, or images that related to social justice.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of them. And so I was with a lot of different people when they went through and looked at the images, a lot of faculty members. And every single faculty member who was alive when Kent State happened, they said almost exactly the same thing that you said. They looked at the photograph and sort of had this shortness of breath, like that, and said, Kent State, like that. It's the same reaction, even now, you know, now it's 50 years later, you know, from the time we were young to where we are now.
That's right, 50 years. That's an important film to show. That's an important photograph to show today.
Yeah, and it is one that, I mean, it's clear, it's not only was it powerful, very, very powerful, because it was too much to take. It was a bridge too far, and change had to happen, and sort of kind of the way we are right now. But it's also the photograph we all remember, and we still get that sort of pit in our stomach. Well, we still have the same visceral reaction to it now, decades later, and that's the power of photography.
Thank you so much, Professor Graham. I really appreciate this. I will, if you can switch us back, yes, and I will probably put stop recording, although I would like to do that polling thing.
I can't remember. Let me see if I can find my notes.
Yeah, I think what I will do, since
I think I have to be, well, now I'm a host, so let me.
Yeah, I realize now you're a co-host, so you have the power to fool with that. And the question would be, let's see, the first question was, did you see all males in that one Hine picture, H-I-N-E, Mr. Hine? I think it was Mr. Hine. Let me find that picture one more time so that I can put that up here. I'm sorry, it was Jacob Reese, and I'll put that up here so that the class.
And you get it lowered a little bit because it's out of your camera view. Yeah, I can't even see it. They're probably.
So what I'm asking them is, do you think it's all male, or do you see any females? And they saw it at the beginning when it was much larger, so they could vote on that. So I would say, was the classroom in the 30s all male, or were there some females? And the other question had to do with your Kent State. And that poll, how would I do that poll? Let's see how I would phrase that.
I can't find it.
How would I phrase that? Not as a picture worth 1,000 words. We would all know the answer to that was yes. I don't think with a poll you can just say, I don't know that you can ask what year. Maybe you can. I doubt it though. What year was, I guess I'd have to say a yes, no. It would have to be a yes, no. So
yeah, it does have to be a yes, no.
Yeah, yeah, so the yes, no, I guess, do we want to take 1972 when 18-year-olds were first allowed to vote? It doesn't matter. We can take 19, sorry.
Well, you could ask the question, when was the law passed what was the first presidential election in which, 18-year-olds could vote? Or the 18-year-old had the vote? And then you could have like the choice, 1970.
But I don't know if you can do that in a poll.
I
don't.
think you can, but I can't find the poll thing. and
Okay,
I
but
think
let's do a
the way
yes.
it's set up.
It's a polling at the bottom there. It says polls.
Okay, I don't see it. So then,
Oh, really?
I
You
guess I
don't,
can't see.
you
I
don't see
can't
it?
see it on my screen, so maybe
Well,
it's
maybe I
over the
can
whole
bring it
screen.
up. Do you see that?
No, you'd
You
have
don't
to
see-
share your screen, I guess.
Okay, and that I know is very complicated.
It's not
So
that
I
complicated.
could add a question, which, oh, but I don't want to do that. That's that, sign in thing. So I think what I'll do is I'm going to get out of this and I'm going to tell the class, whoops, I need to get out of that. What am I doing? Just want to get back to the way it was, get there, get rid of this, get rid of this. Are you still there?
Mm-hmm. I'm here.
Okay. All right. Well, I have lost control. I've lost everything. So can you end the recording? No. Can you see something that says end the recording?
I can stop it.
Yeah.